what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and here we are back between Wooster and Blindside Bluff on this switchback we built. First thing I do is give it a run up and down just to make sure it's all up to snuff, and then I launch right into the terrain building. Naturally, it's not really anything special today, but we're building the mountains out of here, or hills really. They aren't that mountainous. The hills and the track work out of here, and by the time this episode is over, we get trackage. It's not navigable trackage, but it is trackage all the way from point A to point B, as well as installing signals over the route. These are European signals. You may recognize them from Train Man's Fever. Because I saw them and went, oh, I can use these. It's not really the kind of signals I was looking for, but they are semaphores, so they're old enough, and they're kind of unorthodox. Like, they're not the ones we'd expect to be seeing out where this is supposed to be. But it's kind of the middle of nowhere. I don't have a reason for having this specific type of signals, but it's just supposed to be different than everything else, really. Honestly, if I could have gotten signals that were made out of 2x4s with a painted red sort of emblem that you could turn, that'd be great as well. I just wanted something kind of kludgy. I don't know. The signals really aren't particularly kludgy. It just makes me think of that other semaphore video with this specific type of signal falling apart. After all that, I'm still not entirely sure where they came from. So there's a lot of me trying to get the track more or less on a level surface instead of a slope that runs perpendicular to the track. No, that wouldn't be perpendicular. But a slope that runs, not in the direction that the track is heading. A slope that the track is not parallel to. So, I don't know, we've got this track. I need to look at something. Oh yeah, it is. Oh jeez. And I spent a lot of time nudging track and nudging terrain rather, and nudging track around to kind of get it where I think it ought to be. It's just for ease of, frankly, it's to make it look not bad. If we had the tracks sitting on an angle relative to where the slope was, it would just look, it wouldn't look good. It would look kind of shoddy. I mean, I want the whole goal of this. Okay, here's me testing for overall gradients to see if I have to have more significant wiggles. It was 1.17 if I recall correctly. So we're not going to have to bend out of the way to give ourselves more room. We could more or less go straight for the jugular. We could go straight for the top of the hill there. I don't know what I was saying before I got distracted by that. We add another little lake over here. Just scattering these guys about is sort of, I don't know, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It is a good thing. It adds a little bit of variety. It adds a little bit of, I don't think depth is the word that I'm looking for, but it adds, I don't know, an interesting, different sort of shade. Something that we don't see too often. A lot of the section that I built prior to this is mostly rivers. This area has been a lot of lakes. We haven't had too many things that are flowing. Although I am bringing in the first flowing thing in the form of a valley, but we're going to work on that more significantly next episode. I don't even know what number this is. We should be edging towards a run session. No, hold on. Let me check the number of this episode, because I don't know. I can't look above the video like you can. I just dropped something. hold on. Where did I... Oh, hold on. Let's go into here. Let's see what it was that I uploaded last week. It was 1-1... That's not right. That's not right at all. Hold on. Yeah, but I don't know where my phone went. I dropped it. How has nobody called me out on that, by the way? It's written 117. It's supposed to be 115. It has not been that long since the last run session. Hold on, let me go correct that. That's odd. I haven't done that in a while. I must have had Halo on the brain or something. Yeah, scroll over here. Yeah, switch up, switch back. Or up, switch back. How has nobody called me out on this? Nobody's called me out on it. Alright. I catch it. You guys don't get anything. I mean, you guys wouldn't get anything if I... You know, if you were the ones that... Maybe I should establish a rule. If you find a flub in an episode, or an episode title, or something like that, then, yeah, then point that out. I need to do more with these playlists. Maybe I should do that in the background. But, I'm not keen on doing actual mental work in the background of commentating over this because, well, I want to be able to take a glance at what's going on in the video. For example, right now I am building hills. Well, actually, I'm planning for where I'm going to put... Okay, I came around the turn. This is a larger, flatter area. And it sort of gives way to the fact that I'm not going to be building too many more interesting terrain features here. Alright, so we've got a little kettle lake here. A little circular lake. And add that. This was a spur of the moment sort of thing. I was like, oh, this can work out like this. And then the game locked up for a second. Fixed itself. So we've got a lake with a appendage. So that's that. Ended up looking pretty good. But, you know, it's going to look better once we get it all textured up and covered in trees. Because it just will. That's just how it works. Hold on. Yeah. When it's all textured up, covered with trees, it's going to look better. And then we go ahead and start building the wall around this lake. Because the thing with the kettle lake is it doesn't have an outlet. It's just the way they form. The outlet would be through the water table, through groundwater. So we are plotting out where this track is going to go. I decide it loops a little bit too much there, and I bring it out straighter. I don't go... Oh, where do I end off here? Because there's a point where I just go sort of screw it and go all the way there, but I don't think that happens yet. No? Maybe it does. I know at the very least what I have to start doing right here. I start bringing out this cliffside because we'll have plenty of room to get up to 200 with our max gradient of 2%. I ran into trouble building Lee's line because my max gradient was... That's something you guys will see eventually. My max gradient was 0.5%, and I had to ascend 100 feet. And there was a lot of meandering I had to put in there. There's a particularly beautiful area that is the gorge. Well, no, it's not the gorge. It's the valley. We have a gorge on the Iron Horseman Railway, but I'm not the one in charge of that. See, the thing that got me about this river is it was too thick. And I decided, well, we'll come back and make a little bit more spotty. And it actually turned out pretty well. I just couldn't decide on certain areas. I was really trying to avoid using a spline. I used a bunch of, No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I take that back. I avoided using splines and all the other stuff, because frankly I don't like them. You can just, you can use a texture if you do it right. But honestly, you're just wanting... You really just want to have flat sections and then waterfalls. Or you have a sort of rapids texture that you use. But that looks weird. If we could have actual flowing water, that'd be vastly superior to, frankly, what we have to kludge around here. So this is me adjusting. Now, if you notice, it goes in 3 steps, aside from actually building the terrain around it. There's laying the track, there's putting the initial, I don't know what you want to call it, ridge that the track is resting on. In the grand scheme of things, it isn't resting on a ridge, but there's building of the ridge underneath the track to get it up to a reasonable height that you can then take on step 3, and that's adjusting the ground so that it fits the track, so that it doesn't, you're not building a roller coaster instead of building a railroad. Something you've got to really avoid doing that I know people sometimes have trouble with, and I'm not exempt. If you look at the old Great Up Summit on the Geiger Mountains route, it's pretty bad. I'm not sure if it's as bad as Milky's No Man's Land, if I recall what that... I don't remember the actual gradient on that, but it was pretty bad. Calling you out, Milky. Ha! There are plenty of people to call out. At least, I'm working on this route now, and I'm pretty content with how it's coming out. Little bits of terrain that are very beautiful is kind of what I've got to go for. I've got to put equal effort into everything. In the Tamara's Vale and Anaconda, a lot of effort went into the planning phase, and that didn't translate over to the actual work done on it, because all the effort that went into the planning phase could not save me from my lack of knowledge about how you build a railroad. I mean, my only previous experience was Geiger Mountains. I worked on that for years. A lot of time because I didn't know about the handier tools, and because I spent a lot of time doing coding. On top of that, it was done on a rather shoddy computer, so that slowed me down significantly. It was just, I didn't want to load up trains because it was, well, it was a chore. Now, for those of you playing on, those of you less privileged than I now, playing on those shoddy computers, like Jader, especially if, like Jader, you manage to get an incredible amount of work done, that's amazing. Frankly, it's gonna be awesome, man. He's working on a multiplayer route. It's gonna be great. It's huge, and the babes go wild, and I wonder how AI works in multiplayer. I mean, I assume it's based off the host's computer, so it's just as liable to desynchronize as everybody else. But it may just be that, oh, that occurs to me. To make a multiplayer session run smoother, now this takes a lot of the fun in a multiplayer, I'll be honest, but you have your engineers code the drivers instead of driving them directly, because you're less liable to desync that way if the AI are all being run off the source host computer. But again, that's a shoddy way to play trains. It's not, that is not designed for maximum fun. It's designed for getting the damn thing to work. But that's not what you want at the end. It doesn't matter if it works if it's fun. Screw the rules, says the guy who's a stickler for rules. But in the end, it's about, especially in a game like this, it's not about... When you go into a multiplayer session, you go there to have fun with friends, not to code trains. You might as well play by yourself if that was the case, which is basically everything before multiplayer, and even most of the stuff after multiplayer, considering multiplayer is buggy as all hell. Alright, so this is flatter terrain, as I've talked about. towards the end of the video, we resort back to our old friend, the terrain tracks, because the problem is going to arise that we're going to run into a cliff. And I don't want us to actually have to run into a cliff, so I'll build a slope for us to build hills up. The trick to this, or, the reason for this is because when you're... Oh, excuse me. When you do these mountain things, even you'll notice when I raised the base height, when I did that plateau thing earlier, I should have pointed it out because it's something to point out, as a matter of fact. You can go back and find it, I'm sure. What was I talking about when I said that? It would be an easy way to reference it. Anyways, if you go back and find that, it's not too hard. It's not too hard to comprehend, I should say, without going back and looking at it. Basically, I just took that raise to height tool, making this lake a little bigger, and I flattened out a section so that's the new quote-unquote base height. I know I've mentioned this before, but for those of you that weren't paying attention last time because nobody listens to me, or for those of you that are new, the base height is the height that you will go no lower than unless building a specifically depressed terrain formation, like a valley or a lake. Having a consistent base height is important when you're building mountains, because if you have a base height that is too low, you'll spend a lot of your time raising your land to track height, or, what your base height ought to be, and then building the mountains on top of that. It just creates more work if you don't go in and build a base height straight away. The problem with building a base height is that then you have divides between different sections with different base heights, first of all. And you run into trouble with these divides. You run into trouble with the fact that the track, if it's increasing steadily, is going to be crossing into different base height zones. And so therefore you've got to bridge this gap with something that looks good. One of the easier ways to do this is terrain tracks, because you can, immediately blend two sections if you don't want a cliff. So right now what I'm building here is an esker. An esker is another glacial form. Is it an esker or a moraine? I've got to look this up now. But before I do, whatever I'm talking about is a line of hills, literally a line of hills, that indicates where a glacier stopped at one point or another. Because the ice would be coming to this hill and then stopping and then chipping off and turning into water, so you don't get stuff ground down past this point. You can have multiple moraines. Moraines or eskers. You'd have multiple of these things due to a single glacier if the glacier receded to a point and then continued coming apart there. When a glacier comes back forward, if it had warmed up, say twice, so you had the first ending point, then it backed up to a second one, then it backed up to a third one. If it then becomes warm enough or if it then becomes cold enough for the glacier to come back to that first point, it'll destroy the other two. So these are left when a glacier is backing up. And obviously we're not in an ice age here on the Iron Horseman Chronicles route, so we're going to have areas where glaciers were that are, obviously with the drumlins and the eskers, and I guess down at the end there would be a terminal moraine with all sorts of boulders scattered on the beach. I mean, I guess that's what it would be. Whoops. Clicked on something. I need to get back to my window here. Sometimes we use these smaller brushes. Now, you notice I spend a lot of my time using the biggest brushes. There's a reason for that. Aside from the obvious reason of, hey, this... Oh, there's me lighting the track. Aside from the obvious reason of, we've got a lot of terrain to cover. and I missed. So let's fix that. So we have this pretty intense zigzag. We run out of the thing. We run through it, thanks to the river, and we're probably gonna run straight into like a waterfall basin. Okay, this is me finding signals. We're gonna run straight into like a waterfall basin of some description. I had to scroll through this whole friggin' list to find them. I had no idea where they were. I didn't even remember what they called because it's been 2 or 3 weeks since I downloaded them. What they were called, rather. What they are called. And there they are. Alright, I had to find the white run for the job. Right one for the job. That was a weird one. I wasn't really sure what to do with that one. But, you know. Too many moving parts. I mean, it's the same amount of moving parts. A strange moving part. Didn't like it, so I went with these things. And I just had to figure out where to put them. I didn't put one on the inside track there. I probably should have. Oh, and then I had to figure out how the line was working. Put one back there. Move it back up a little bit. Oh, I got rid of it in the end? I should have left it there. So we followed this track all the way back to Worcester. Put in some signals. Before the junctions. Which is what you want to do. One back here as well. Or not. I remember placing a lot of these down and then immediately changing my mind. I didn't realize how much chaos it was going to be for me in post. Going, okay, and this? No, not this. I forgot what this thing was called for a while there. Now we're in the good-looking section. There's one point where I had my sweet mate come in and I was showing off Waterville here. That one's a go. We put this back here. I realized it was behind the speed sign and then the stop sign. And then the stop sign was pretending to be a yellow signal, which is obviously impossible because it's a sign and it doesn't change color or orientation unless somebody goes out there and bends the thing. Anyways, we've got I had to adjust that to move it behind the signal so that it made sense on the map. Anyways, here we go back to the mountains. And by mountains I mean hills, and by hills I mean the relatively flat section that we have to work on. So we're gonna flatten this out, and then at some point here I did this. This was stupid. I regret doing this. I was like, oh, I'll just get it up to a decent height and then we can work in it from there. And then I got to here and went, wait, that's bad. And that's when I decided that I needed to break out the terrain tracks. Unfortunately, the area is so large that each terrain track takes about 30 seconds at least. So that's a pain. If you'll notice that it's kind of stuttering, it's because the amount of terrain being changed by the terrain track the game can't handle, for whatever reason. Yeah, and then I get to here and go, oh wait, we're going to be cutting into this embankment. I need to fix the damn thing. I break out the other kind of tool because the two tools are obviously so significantly different in their... not in what they do, but in how they do it. Only one of them works, really. So here we go, doing terrain tracks for the last couple minutes of the episode. I wanted to do multiple at a time, but then I realized that they were so shoddy over a great distance, I really only had to do, or I really only should have done one at a time. And that's what I ended up doing. Also, the other thing is, I don't think we're gonna have any more bridges. As amazing as this place is, that's me showing off. Quick back and forth, and then back to building terrain tracks. Don't know what I was gonna say. Anyways, I was showing off there for a minute. Yeah, I ended up doing only one at a time because it takes so long to do just one. And I got a solid section done and decided, okay, that's good enough for today because the terrain tracks are bothering me. They're annoying. Over a shorter distance, it would have been less painful, but I decided to make the slope the whole thing to make it less of a weird sort of. It's tough to pretend that the slope doesn't exist when you're going over it with the brush. You can do it pretty well, but you'll notice, like, oh, the side of this hill is obviously steeper than the other one. You know, it's the kind of thing where you just don't, you won't really notice it unless you really look at it, but doing it this way will make the next step easier. I'm not sure if it's easier in the long run, because that includes everything, but it's, it'll get there. We'll get it done. Terrain tracks were never the best. Well, for some applications they're the best thing, probably. But, they aren't. Don't make a whole map with just terrain tracks, it'll look wonky. In fact, you'd be hard pressed.